Episode 9.
Wow, it's a little bit of a silence there. Yes, episode 9, almost coming to a season finale. Very excited. So much to talk about, fitting into one small little window of 20 minutes.
Indeed. How's your week been?
Yes, week. Actually, super busy week.
Game last night.
Yeah, Chelsea, the big Chelsea. Dude. You know, it's interesting how much I noticed the fans.
Oh, okay.
Never did as a player. I know basketball's different, but it is also indoors, so you can it's a different dynamic. But I really noticed, and they really are, the fan support. Manchester United was the same last Sunday, and Chelsea last night. Just like the effort, the build, more numbers, like the local derby the other day, the over in the Etihad, I think it was Arsenal and Spurs, 47,000 people.
So low.
You know, it's really cool. They're big numbers, but really passionate people, painted faces, flags, cheers. No, that wasn't just me. Come on, girls, let's go.
Come on, your eyes.
Yeah, get me in the video. I tried to stay away from those videos. But yeah, great atmosphere, but really like boosting them. And well, no, I'll hold that back because I don't know if they are. That was something I thought mid-game yesterday. So very, very dominant from a Chelsea supporter fan base last night. Very little on the West Ham, but they still were there. They're still really loyal supporters. But I did wonder, through a dip period in the game yesterday for Chelsea, or even we had a score straight off the bat. I think we were 3 minutes in and there was a score, and the Chelsea crowd just got going. I wonder, do the players hear that specifically for them, or do they just hear noise? Like, what are they actually hearing and connecting with? You know, so I think I saw, slightly off topic, but same umbrella term. Manchester City brought out a scarf where there's a sensor in the back of it, and they are trying to, how effective or how reliable, I do not know, but I could look into it for us. The fans wear the scarf, and it connects with something at the back of their neck. So whether it's a pulse or some sort of activity, and then it monitors elevation throughout the game.
Wow.
True story. Yeah, true story. Now I'll look into it, and then I'll come back next week and be like, they got me. April Fools. But I did look at it. It comes up on my Twitter feed a lot. It'll probably, after this, my phone will have heard me, and it'll be all over for the ads. Or I might buy one and see what happens. I'll have to just scratch the Man City off. I'll get him for trouble for that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of football going on. And then started doing some work with rugby league, and some of those women are just, well, all, not some, but I'm getting to know them a little bit more. Incredible women, just sharing a lot of cool things, and really interested in just developing, but having a support network around them to feel stronger to go forward and challenge different things that they're not happy with in their environment. So really refreshing and always helpful. You know me, like having that multiple perspective on different situations, because different sports allow me to see it in different ways. Just something I really, really enjoy and energizes me. So that nobody probably needed to know the full stretch of the week, but
amazing, always good. but no, people like to know you, right? You know,
yeah, bits of me. And they're like, okay, enough from you. Now talk about something interesting.
Well, we do have something interesting this week.
We do.
To build on it. So I think this is at the core of coaching.
Okay.
Right? And that is practice design. So as coaches, we have to, or we have an opportunity to design an environment for people, whether you're young or old, or very good or not so good. We have the chance to design that environment. And somebody on Twitter who's worth a follow is Philip O'Callaghan, who's a tennis coach, and he tweeted earlier on in the week 4 practice design skills every coach needs. So identification, so identifying the area to improve; collaboration, how do you co-design, and I think that's quite useful work, co-design with players and coaches; creativity, to design practice, task, and constraint manipulations; and observation, to observe the task and make adjustments in the moment. So I think it'd be quite cool just to spend a couple of minutes on each of them, just to get into a little bit about what kind of sparks your thought and what jumps out from each of those, really.
And I just think we should let people know now that this episode is now extended to 2.5 hours. And I've got my notepad and I'm writing it down. Okay, I'm not going to go in order because I'm drawn to co-design. And
Okay.
I'm drawn to co-design because this is a word for a really long time. I'm going to lump them together with collaboration and co-creation and co-design. Okay, just for now,
Yeah.
so people can grasp onto something. And I see the kind of utopian, almost in photograph form, athlete, coach, or group sitting down, and we're talking about what's your favorite session and what do you like in the session and what don't you like and how do you put this together. And I know that's really simplistic, but I see this over here. And then I see the reality. And how do I bring, or what am I doing? How do we and the world of coaching realize that this actually can work? This is really powerful, but we're on, for whatever reason, maybe it's time, maybe it's ego, maybe it's previous exposure from a participant point of view that would hinder their ability to be able to articulate what they'd want in the session, and it might not be productive in a way to produce what we need to do. Productive and produce, how like clinical are those words? But you know, they're like, oh, I just want to play this game that we did unopposed with one football and 900 people, and they're like, oh, okay, how can we work that through? But still, even in that conversation, you know where their motivations are. You know that you could say, well, you want one football and the whole team to play. What about 4 goals and 3 footballs? And see what we can get, or, you know, adapt. And it's not saying that. There was a phrase at a conference I was at before, a guy from the Dutch Olympic Council used it when we talked about blueprint. He just said, it isn't me giving over my idea, it's a negotiation to get to the end point. And I think, like, not necessarily having your blueprint, but having a template where you know where different inputs come in and you know how to navigate through those different sections to get to a point where the end point is, I feel like this has been co-created. I think it's just a really fascinating topic that if people think about, do I do this? Why don't I do this? What, even if it's a question to your athletes, like I just said one there, like, what was your favorite session of all time and why? That can be starting, surely, the ball rolling on what they enjoy. You can have a conversation that branches off to motivation. You can get to know the person a little bit more. Their voice can be heard, confidence can grow, as well as the nitty gritty of the design of the practice for a bigger kind of impact. There was no question in there, but I'm just coming up for air.
What if they, and it depends on the level, I guess, of age and stage and such like, and you may have done some fun stuff, some enjoyable stuff that may not have necessarily had as many sport specific outcomes.
Yeah.
But what if they say that was our favorite, probably because of the enjoyment aspect? So I think, so if I put that into my world, and I don't know, I'll have to ask the kids. If they say none of it, that's a problem. But if I say to them,
oh, thanks for that.
yeah, what was your favorite thing? And they say it was football cricket, where the parents were all involved. And it was a fun thing we did literally in the very last session of the year. And the parents joined in. What if they come back with that as the most fun, and you get into this kind of want versus need debate about where does co-creation stop and start? Or does it just become a negotiation?
Well, I think that's a really good starting point to look at. If they as a collective come back with that, that's telling you something in itself. What, let's say it's just the example you gave about the cricket and the parents. Did they like it because their parents added value, or their parents were more controlled and less verbal on the sideline, or they were involved in the session and everyone kind of had a jolly? And the cricket was nice because that was the one time that you used cricket and something different. and they wanted to go back to something different, but cricket was their only word that or vehicle they could use to get you to that realization that something different is good. So what was it about the cricket?
Well, it was a football game, but
Sorry, football game. Sorry, not cricket.
yeah, it was a football game. So
With
yeah, you defend a wicket made of cones, and you've just got to kick it and run. But
yeah, so sorry,
yeah,
So
yeah,
like tennis.
less game related outcomes,
Yeah,
more social related outcomes. I would say.
yeah. And so it's a really good point. So is it something about what was within the parent and the cricket football that they enjoyed? Like I know when we're at West Ham and they love tennis, tennis football. Like it's the competition in that they like. I think if we just lift the competition out of that and put it in something else, they'd be like, oh, brilliant. I don't know for sure, but we do have those conversations. But even around the involvement in the parents, was it just more people, or like I said before, was it managing the parent relationship to become something like they're in the middle so they understand and they hear and
Yeah.
support? But also, I think going back to what I said about the structure of your, say, template of your session, it doesn't need to be inputted for the whole part or on a regular basis. It's just this idea of connecting a group of people or individual athletes and the coach to have a conversation about what's cool and what's good, and they can also hear where you're coming from. And then I think people say, oh, what a nice segue, that I'm not creative, but like the examples or the breakdown that Phil has given there about what creativity can be means that you don't have to be like, I'm only creative in this space, or I'm not creative at all because my perception of what creativity is hindering my creativity, you know. But I think it's a really good starting point. And then like if I look at, say, I'll use my own environment just because it's a fresh example, is that if we sat down and the coaches had a conversation with players or a leadership group or the captains and the co-captain about sessions, we might get a little bit of insight into what they feel is missing, where the gaps are that happen outside the main meetings of pre and post game analysis and all that stuff. But also, and then the last point on this heading, is it nice that this idea can break down the labels of we are the coaches and it is our job to do this, so don't come within our boundary because we're doing our professional job, or you know, our grassroots job or a playground job or a pathway job of being the coach, being the assistant coach, being the manager, and you are the players. And then the less of them and us, or just more open channels.
How can you help a coach move into that space though? Because that's quite tough, isn't it? I think and certainly probably more novice coaches that may not have been coaching as long, that don't have the wisdom to just draw upon and shape something almost on the fly at times. But the first step, I think, is recognizing that letting them in can be really helpful because you learn some stuff. But also letting them in doesn't mean you're giving them all of the control. So how would you kind of help a coach make that first step to even let people in, to get past the I'm the coach, I run it, I've got coach written on my back, therefore, you know.
Say, stop wearing that t-shirt first of all. That would be the big
Hey, when I got my kit at the club, the first thing I said was, do not put coach on the back, and I do not want my initials on the front of it.
You know, that's what you're getting from Christmas. I'm getting you one of them.
I'll set fire to it live on air.
Fire hazard.
I said they can learn my name, and nobody needs to see coach written across the back. Like I mean, has Ken got S&C written across the back of his top?
No,
or does the analysts have analysts across the like nutritionists?
Yeah.
Like no one else does, do they?
Oh, that's tickled me. Yeah, no, and I'm not. And if there are people out there who wear those t-shirts, and we're laughing, I'm sorry.
Yes,
you have loads of other clothes. Take it off. We know, you know. Like you said there, get them to know your name. I know different environments or globally different people like to use the term coach instead of a person's name, and that's probably for another conversation. But yeah, you don't need the t-shirt. I would say
Coach Jen.
Coach Jen, hey, hi you guys. And then I start speaking the accent. That was awful. That was very xenophobic of me there now to be making fun. But I will say, just on the back of your question, is just do it. Just do it and see what happens. Just, start. I know we kind of targeted towards that younger group, or maybe, the worry that if I ask, 10 or 15 children, or I'm in a sport that doesn't usually do it, what will people think? But just do it and try it and see. And you can have it in your little cluster at the start of, your session. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to get into it. But I think I've referenced this session before because it did absolutely just really inspire me. It was a British cycling session, and these boys and girls that were over there, 13, 14, 15 years old, just so professional in how they managed themselves in the session. Now, I know that's the environment that the coaches had created. One particular coach that I was working with, like, meticulous planning. And we did speak at the time actually about input, and he doesn't know the volume. He doesn't know there was a large volume of people there, but he doesn't know them individually. He knows them kind of how they do in competitions and their name. But I guarantee if you were to sit down and ask them, as I witnessed in the debriefs or rotations between each on and off the track, the richness in the conversation and how they knew what they liked and didn't like at that age. And there was no one else around, like their parents, and there's no coaches at this. There's, as far as like their club coaches and stuff. So I say, do it. Find that question that works for you. Whether it's a soft touch of, what you enjoyed the last time we did it, or what's your favorite thing and why'd you come here? Like all of those little bits that what the agenda is, but you're getting a little bit more information. And then it could be asking one person or asking a group of people, depending on how much interaction you have with them and how much trust and kind of behavior management is there, like that's a big class for me. But like, if you get a group of 30 kids and you're like, what do you all want to do? And then the session's over by the time the last kid answers, or what he said, what she said. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. Just do it, just start. I know it's oversimplifying it.
I remember kind of doing exactly that in the moment in a session in Dubai. I was over doing some coach development stuff for a friend of mine that worked over there at the time. And we were in a sports hall, and it was a group of 8 and 9-year-old kids, and I was doing a football practice because it was for football coaches. And it was like a little 3-team game, and I kind of built it up and kind of started to rack up the it wasn't complex, but kind of lots of things going on for little kids. And I'd gone through, I think, kind of 2 little progressions. And then one of the kids, I can still picture him now, little blonde kid, he had number 8 on. And he said to me, Nick, when one of the other teams has got the ball, can I go and help them, even though I'm not on their team, to add more support? And I'm like, whoa, stop the practice. Stop. Right. That's way better than what I was going to do next.
Wow.
Let's try that and see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, my coach work is done. Like, he'd already taken the practice in a different way, and it would have lent to some slightly different outcomes. But it was a far better progression than I had planned next.
Wow.
But mainly because I was quite comfortable with that happening. And I also really wanted to model that to the coaches to say that, like, the kids have got some pretty good ideas too.
Yeah.
And being able to do it on the fly in the moment to go, like my session plan here, I have to deliver my session plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
And the other thing that you've reminded me of there is how we pre-plan and maybe over-plan sometimes, and there's no which I know we've spoke about a number of times and going off piste. But are we planning, and I don't mean to use invasion as an example always, but I'll veer it to something else in a sec, that if or it could be any sport really, when we think about tennis and Phil, like if something's gone wrong in a competition or we haven't met expectations, then we do like our little debrief, reflection, gap analysis, and some coaches then go straight into fixing that. So like you look at other sports and they do a whole cycle, macro, micro, and all these different bits. for a whole season, and they look at what the competition peaks are and when they need to be at their best, blah, blah, blah. But if you're somewhere in between that level of professionalism or organization, but you're not just doing the 1 hour a week and you're doing maybe 2 sessions a week, I'd still would say to stay away from just fixing problems the following week and look at why the problems happened and where in the development is each person, but also why did they happen from the athlete or the participant's point of view? Like, what are they going through? Was it, is it decision making, and is that because of fatigue, and is it nothing to do with technical execution in, say, in a tennis match? So around the planning of the session from a collaboration point of view, sometimes I think it's really interesting to think about that conveyor belt of plans that you might just be rolling through, But yeah, do it, just go and try. And the observation part, I mean, I'm coach developer hat straight away dragged me into that word, and how I love doing it. And I do it in my daily job as well. I love watching the session. I love listening to interactions. But what are your thoughts around that referenced observation?
Yeah, I don't know if it fits really well in that flow, because he's talking about practice design skills.
Okay.
But I think this is more a delivery. I don't think it's necessarily the practice design. I think it might be 2 separate things he's kind of hitting on there, but I mean, it's still clearly a really important part of the coaching process in terms of are the participants or the players, the people, and does the practice look like you hoped it looked? So in your head when you were kind of mapping this out, and I wasn't at coaching because I was away with work on Tuesday this week, and I left one of the dads, the scientist dad in charge of the under-9s, and he sent me a picture of what he was planning. Remember, he's not a qualified coach. He sent me a picture. He said, "I've done what Nick would do," and he's drawn it out.
Lovely.
by hand and stick pen. And he had some kind of wide areas. And I said to him afterwards, "Well, did it go as planned? How did it happen?" And he said, "It just didn't look like I'd planned because the kids started to do something different."
Ah,
like,
interesting.
okay, right, cool. So what did you do? And I think that fits into that observation bit, and how the importance of somebody else that maybe can inform some of your thinking with some questions a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you're working on your own, or you're working if you are working on your own, I think how you observe and make adjustments, as Phil said, I think is really important, because it can link to that co-creation bit, because the adjustments that you might make might not always be the adjustments that you want to make. There might be some of the adjustments that the kids want to make, or the players want to make, whoever it is.
Brilliant.
Or you have to manipulate it to try and get towards the outcome that you were trying to get if it's not working. So there's multiple different things that you might make adjustments on the practice on. But also, I think it goes back to that planning bit earlier on of, if you're co-coaching with somebody else, and many people in many sports will have another person alongside them, whether it's another parent or someone else that's, if it's a professional role, etc. So what's their job in that moment linked to what you've planned? So is their job to help manipulate the session with your thinking, and you talk about it and you plan it and go, "Oh, is that working? Is that happening?" Because too often I see just too lots of information just being shouted that way, and often like conflicting, and not enough information going this way. And I think it's racking up this discussion, not that discussion, to see if what you've identified, what you've co-designed, and the constraints, are they actually working? But I think you have to have that conversation between you first. And I don't think that happens enough in terms of clarification of roles on site in order to do that.
No, brilliant. I'd say you should go back about 7 minutes and snip that out and put that in your pocket, everybody, and keep it forever and ever. And then go on and follow Phil. And there, Nick and Phil have helped you solve everything in your coaching job. Done.
Guided some planes into each other.
It's gold. It's gold. I love the prompt from Phil, and we'll give him a retweet on at Coach Convo, which is where we're at on Twitter, which is where we'll see you every week with the comments and interactions around the episodes or ideas. Send them to coachconversation@gmail.com. What a brilliant episode, thinking about the detail. And look at us saying a brilliant episode. I really enjoyed it. But it does really get me thinking about so many things there. So I hope you've taken something from it. I hope you really enjoy it. And we will see you for episode 10 next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.